Okay, today we're going to multiply radical expressions. So we talked about simplifying radical expressions where you looked at a radical and found the highest perfect square that divided in. And you're going to have to remember that for today's lesson. But today we're going to multiply radical expressions. So to introduce this, I want you just to think about, if you saw a problem like this, you know the square root of 4 is 2. And you know the square root of 25 is 5, and 2 times 5 is 10. If you saw this problem where 4 times 25 is under the radical, you would multiply 4 times 25 and get 100. And you know the square root of 100, what times itself is 100, is 10. These two things are equivalent. So if you have the square root of 4 times the square root of 25, it's the same thing as the square root of 4 times 25. So we should have noticed they were the same thing. That leads us to the product property of radicals, where you have the square root of a times the square root of b. It's equivalent to the square root of a times b. And we need these to be positive integers, or positive numbers here, not integers, positive numbers. So if you had the square root of 9 times the square root of 2, that's the square root of 18. And then, of course, remember, you can simplify that down to 3 root 2. So just a little review before we get going here. We do need that list of perfect squares. So 1 times 1 is 1, 2 times 2 is 4, 3 times 3, 4 squared, 5 squared, 6 squared, and so on. And we're going to use this list to help us simplify radical expressions. And obviously there are infinite perfect squares. I just wrote the first 12, but we need, those are the most frequently used ones that we're dealing with. So when it's in simplest equivalent form, means there are no factors that are perfect squares under the radical. And a factor means it divides in. And it's called in the radicand. But that just means under the radical. That's the same thing as square root, same thing as root. So if you hear me say any of those things, same meaning, different expressions. All right. That's the first video all done. Fast and easy.